my home. I promise to keep it healthy and beautiful. I will love the land, the air, the water, and all living creatures. I will be a defender of my planet.
My name is Commissioner Frank Avila, and I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And today, the name of our show is The Future of Clean Water. And today, my guest is Kent Kirk, Executive Director of the National Association of Clean Water Agency. Mr. Kirk, he grew up in New York City, and he became a lawyer. And he wanted to give back something back to his community. And his community is the whole United States, since he's the executive director of the National Association of Clean Water Agency. Ken, I'm glad that you're on our show.
Glad to be here.
And
Appreciate the invitation.
thank you. You know, Ken, why do you want to give back to our community?
Well, it's a long story, but basically I grew up in Manhattan, and I got a lot of good breaks from folks in Manhattan, and always wanted to give something back to cities. And when I was going to law school, I got interested in environmental law, got a master's in environmental law, and ended up working at the Environmental Protection Agency for a couple of years, dealing with water issues, but that wasn't good enough for me. I met these folks who were part of the, at the time, the Association of Metropolitan Sewerage Agencies, now the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, and they seemed to me to really make a difference in their communities back home across the country, and I wanted to be part of it.
Well, I'm glad you are the executive director, because, you know, our world is changing. And in order to save our world for the future, for our kids, their kids, and the kids in the future, for 50, 100, 200 years from now, the environment is going to play a very important role. And this is where your agency comes into play, and it's the National Association of Clean Water Agency. Now, Ken, what role do you see the federal government playing to help meet these challenges?
Well, they have a very important role as the key agency responsible for implementing regulations that determine whether we're going to achieve our clean water goals as a nation. But lately, in our view, they've been moving away from that responsibility by suggesting that they don't have a responsibility to help communities fund their programs at the local level. Instead, they're relying on what they refer to as the four pillars.
Four pillars?
The four pillars.
You mean like holding up a house?
Holding up a house.
Yeah.
And the four pillars are, better management of utilities, higher rates.
Higher rates?
Higher rates.
And who pays for the higher rates?
Ratepayers at the local level.
These are the taxpayers, right? The citizens, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Water conservation is a third pillar, and then doing things on a watershed basis is the fourth. You'll notice that the fifth pillar, money is missing in this foundation that they're building, and we've done some studies of all of those pillars, and while they're all good, folks ought to manage their
manage
systems
properly,
well,
yes.
and they ought to increase their rates to meet their needs over time. And in certain cases, water conservation is a good idea, and we all be looking at watershed approaches in the future. But when you take all those into account, maybe you take 15 or 20% off of the gap, funding gap that's out there in the neighborhood of $500 billion.
You mean we have a gap of 15 to 20%?
We have a gap of about $500 billion just to deal with all the wastewater things that we need to do to come into compliance with the Clean Water Act and rehabilitate and replace our aging infrastructure.
Explain to the audience about the Clean Water Act, because they may not know what the Clean Water Act is.
Clean Water Act is a statute that Congress passed in 1972 in the face of Lake Erie that was dead and rivers catching on fire,
Yes.
and a lot of other horrible situations related to water quality around the country.
There's too much phosphate in
Exactly.
yes.
And basically the Congress said we're going to change all that. We're going to require all communities to install secondary treatment of wastewater. We're going to provide a lot of funding to help them do that.
Okay.
And we're going to ensure that water quality in this great nation is a lot better than what it was in 1970 when the rivers were catching on fire.
And that is the Clean Water Act of 1970.
Clean Water Act 1970.
Now, what are the what action have the United States taken recently to address the funding gap?
Well, we've been working with Congress for the past several years on the need to promote a trust fund for clean water like they have for highways and airports, because there's a lot of competition for funding these days with the Iraq War and health care and other issues. And so our idea is that we need to set aside a funding source to use exclusively to deal with our water infrastructure, because it's really critical to the country to have a strong water infrastructure.
So the highways have a trust fund, the airport has a trust fund. Now that's those trust funding is the funding comes from when April 15th, when we all pay our income tax. It comes out of the income tax. A portion of that income tax goes into that funding.
Well, in the case of the highways, there's a tax on gasoline.
On gasoline, okay.
In the case of airports, there's a tax on tickets.
Yes.
And there are a lot of other trust funds, too, that deal with issues that serve a public purpose, have a high national priority, and where the needs are so great that you need the federal government to come in and use its vast resources to help. Clean water fits those to a T. It is a national priority. It is a public good. And it is deserving of the economies of scale that the federal government can bring to the issue.
So how would funding occur? Would it be the use of paying through your real estate taxes, or because the way we work it here in Cook County, our real estate tax bill has a portion of it where it's divided up into 12 different local agencies here, school, park district, your education, city of Chicago, and there's a line item for water reclamation district. So would that line item, a portion of that or increased portion of that, will go toward the trust fund?
Well, probably not, because that is reserved for the Reclamation District and other communities around the country. We're trying to identify sources of funding that would complement those funds that are raised locally, that would be part of an equitable, broad-based fee of some kind on flushable products or bottled water, or a very small fee on corporate income tax. Something that eases the pain throughout the country, but demonstrates that there is a commitment of our government and of the American people to provide additional funds to deal with what we see as a potential funding crisis and water quality crisis in the country.
I hope that your lobbying efforts in having a trust fund for the clean water throughout the United States is successful.
We hope so too. We're working real hard on it, and we are making some progress. Recently, the House of Representatives, for example, passed legislation that authorized $14 billion for the existing federal loan program for clean water.
A loan, you're talking about a loan now. They have to pay
Loans.
it back over 30 years or 25
And you
years.
have to pay the money back. But it also includes a provision directing, I can't remember which federal agency, but directing a federal agency to look at potential revenue sources for a trust fund.
Okay.
And we're hoping that that legislation will be, or similar legislation will be introduced in the Senate, and for the first time in many, many years we'll have legislation dealing with clean water infrastructure. Unfortunately, the administration has threatened to veto this legislation because of the amount of money that is contemplated by the
$14 billion.
$14 billion.
You know, we here in Cook County about a year ago we took over stormwater management, and anytime we have to do something, we have to go to Springfield because we're under the authority of the state representatives to do anything, pay raise or change the way we do our business. We have to change the law, the statute. And we've been lobbying to take over stormwater management because the community wanted us to take over stormwater management because it was a natural fit for us. Because we have the deep tunnel, we have the reservoirs, and we had the staff, but we didn't have the funding. And so we went and lobbied the first time, and the state representative and the Senate passed it for us, but the governor vetoed it. So we lost that lobbying effort that year. Then we went back again, and the reason why he vetoed it because the governor ran on a platform not to raise taxes. But yet the flooding here in Cook County amounted to an awful lot of dollars. And when it floods here, a person may not be able to go to work, cannot move products and goods, transportation, damage to the house. I mean, it costs a lot of dollars. So because what we were proposing was a small amount in raising the taxes in comparing to the damages. So we went back again. And again, we had it passed through the House and the Senate, and again, the governor vetoed it. And then we overrode the veto, and that's how we took over stormwater management. So, but this is a state level. I mean, you're working on a national level, and it's a little harder.
Well, it takes perseverance, so I'm glad to hear that you finally persevered and won.
Yes.
Because we're working real hard, and we're hoping one day to be able to come back here and tell you that we won too.
Now, what is National Association of Clean Water Agency solution to address the funding cap? And you mentioned that would be a what you just mentioned,
a trust fund.
Yeah.
And the reason we think
you got that trust fund will bring up that 20% more that is lacking.
Depends on how much is in it, but it would number one, support and sustain the existing loan program, which is very important to a lot of communities around the country.
And and you have other communities that can't afford. They need the money, but they don't have the dollars to pay it back. So I hope there's some provision in there to allow for these communities that are unable to pay it back to have some kind of allowance.
Under our legislation, a significant amount of the money is coming out of the trust fund would support high priority projects, and those would include projects in areas where affordability was a major issue. So that would certainly be the case under our recommendation.
Now, what trends or issues will National Association of Clean Water Agency focus on in the coming months? And are you got short? Yeah, you must have a short-term and long-term goal.
Well, every day is a new challenge. It seems. We have our bread and butter issues that we've been working on for a long time, and with a lot of success. But probably more important is the future. And if you look at the challenges that all of us are facing in the future with increasing population, which means additional dollars are going to need to be raised to support infrastructure for those folks. And the industrial stressors that would go along,
Sure.
with that.
And by
foreign-
stressor, you're talking about industrial pollution that has to be taken care of?
Exactly, industrial pollution and the issues that are being raised by, major investments in China and India, and the cost of steel,
Sure.
and the cost of concrete, not to mention, the fact that the regulatory agenda is going to get tougher
Because of the environment.
because of the environment.
Sure.
And enforcement is not going to go away.
No.
There's going to be more enforcement. So, and then on the money side, there's going to be, perhaps not, but there may even be less of that. So you look at all those challenges that, we're facing, and you have to come away with the fact that all utilities around the country are going to have to work harder, and they're going to have to do more, with less. And a lot of them are doing that.
And this is where those four pillars
the four
comes into
pillars.
play.
That's correct.
Management is one, right?
Management, rate increases,
Rate increases, yeah.
water conservation,
Yes.
and doing things on a watershed, basis, and more of that is going to have to be done. But in and of themselves, they're not going to, solve the funding problem that we're talking about. That's going to require the federal government stepping up to the plate and saying, as they did in the 70s, that we are a true partner. This is a big issue. It's really important to the American people, and we have to make it a high priority again.
Yeah, and the American people, especially your environmental groups, are very vocal. And they're like to see phosphorus removed from products. They like to see other chemicals in products that's harmful for the environment and is also harmful for the humans to be put in these products. And we mentioned industry. Industry is going to have to change their ways also. And you mentioned people. They have to have a job.
That's right.
So we have to have the environment on one side. You talk about the four pillars. Well, on our side, we have to have the environmental group that is fighting to protect the environment. We have industry that is want to produce their products to make a profit, but they need and people need jobs. So and then we have our agencies that treat wastewater and protect our water supply. So all four, we have your four pillars on one side that the government has, and we could say we have our own four pillars. That our four pillars have to work together, because if we don't have, if we don't treat our wastewater and have clean water, if we don't have a safe environment, and that's where our environmental groups come into being, if we don't have industry to provide jobs to people, I mean, we won't have funding.
That's correct.
So we have our own four pillars to work with.
And what's happening, Frank, is number one, I think there's clear recognition that our association and our members, like the Reclamation District, are environmental organizations.
Yes.
I mean, these are the folks who are working every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year long, cleaning up the water. And what's happening, at least from our perspective, is we're starting to be regarded by other environmental organizations, quote unquote, as an environmental organization, and we're doing a lot more things with them. We're going to be signing a memorandum of agreement with Ducks Unlimited, which never would have happened 30 years ago. And recently we put together a green infrastructure statement with the Natural Resources Defense Council, a key environmental organization in the country, that was embraced by the Environmental Protection Agency, which is going to make it the keystone of their Earth Day presentation in Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks.
Oh, excellent.
So we're doing our part as environmentalists as well.
You know, I'm glad that you mentioned that our agency, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, is an environmental agency, because you know we have 2,000 employees, 1,000 are professional, 1,000 are tradespeople, and everyone cares about the environment. And as I mentioned, we have an excellent research and development department, and every person in that research and development cares about the environment. We have every type of personnel in that research and development, scientists, microbiologists, civil, caring about the environment and doing research projects that is being studied now for the future. And I think that's a role that our agency could play. And you know, your agency is probably playing a role not only in the United States, but you're probably contributing information around the world, because maybe there's other agencies around the world that comes to our association and saying, look, we have this problem. Have you had this type of problem, and how do you solve it?
That may very well be in the world of the internet. It's not something that we keep track of, but I'm sure it happens.
Good. Now, do you expect the EPA regulatory and enforcement regime to become more or less strict in the future?
Oh, Frank, it's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher as we go down the road. There are new issues that are coming up with regard to different types of contaminants, whether they're related to pharmaceuticals and other things, nanotechnology.
Yes.
And our members are at the front lines of all these issues, because they will enter into their systems and they will have to address them one way or another, depending on what the regulatory climate is. But as time goes on, I think the regulatory climate is going to get tougher and more comprehensive, with the more people that we have, with the more industry that we have,
Sure.
And the simple fact that the American people are going to demand it.
Well, I would say as long as we have environmental groups voicing the concern of improving the environment, I think the government is going to listen to the environmental groups, saying yes, we have to improve our environment. And you know, everyone probably saw that movie that what's his name, Gore put out,
Yes.
Global Warming.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie, when they come out of the theater after watching that movie, they're all concerned about the environment.
And that's a very strong additional reason for a trust fund and additional funds, because nobody knows what the impacts of global warming are going to be on agencies such as yours, although I will predict that there are going to be ramifications that your agency and others around the country are going to have to deal with.
And you know, and also the way we treat wastewater, whatever solution we treat, may have an effect on the atmosphere also. And so as you mentioned, everyone's connected.
Everyone is connected.
Our water reclamation plants is connected to the environment. The environment is connected to the environmental groups that want to make sure we have a good environment. The workers that are living here has to breathe and drink our water,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they have to work, and they're connected to the industry, and the industry has to provide jobs, and they have to make a profit. So we have to learn to live with each other.
That's a very good point, because 35 years ago, when we started focusing on environmental issues in a major way, we built these silos. There was a silo to deal with wastewater issues, and another one to deal with drinking water, and another one over here to deal with stormwater. And what we found is that we have to knock those silos down. The simple fact of the matter is that water is water. Whether it's wastewater, drinking water, or storm water, it's part of the water cycle. And the sooner we start recognizing that and dealing with water issues on a watershed basis, the better off we're going to be, and the more cost-effective we're going to be able to deal with those issues.
I'd like to get your opinion on the Clean Water Act. Is it capable of meeting the needs of the 21st century? And also, after that, what would your vision be for a new 21st century version of the Clean Water Act?
That's a tough question.
Or
Frank.
do we need a new, or should we continue with the same Clean Water Act?
It's a tough question.
And what's your vision? I mean, because
the Clean Water Act has resulted in a lot of good things. At the same time, it does have drawbacks. It has created its own silo, and while a lot of people talk about the need to deal with issues on a watershed basis, the Clean Water Act doesn't really give you that much latitude to do that. So in our view, either the Clean Water Act has to be modified to make it more 21st century friendly, or we need new legislation that deals with these issues on a broader basis.
Now, is there any group out there lobbying for this type of change?
Our organization is starting to do this because the simple fact of the matter is that a lot of our members around the country are facing these issues locally. Wastewater agencies are having to deal with drinking water agencies on common issues within their regions, and stormwater agencies, as you said. Reclamation districts taking over stormwater. That's happening in a lot of other places as well. So
and the reason why, because we have the staff. We have engineers, we have civil engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, scientists. So we're working to solve these type of problems.
And our members are saying, this is where we need to go. Our organization has been very responsive to future issues, future needs. We changed our name a year and a half ago to better reflect what we do and who we are. I don't think we're done yet. I think you're going to see our organization be even more open to membership from utilities around the country who do more than just wastewater, who do stormwater, who do other things.
Now, are there ways that citizens can support what you do?
Definitely. I would direct folks who care about clean water to a website that we created, the cleanwateramerica.org website. It's an interactive site that allows individuals to register their issues and concerns with Congress directly, and provides a lot of good information about what's happening in the country on clean water issues as well.
Thank you very much. The future of clean water is very important. And as a human being, we all need water.
Thank you very much.